Hello, sports fans. Been a while. Anthony with Bleacher Bums Gaming and Glory Days Games, and just wanted to stop in. Our football season ended officially last Friday, so I have free time back now. Finally, uh, season itself, I'll maybe do a video on that later. Obviously, we did not make the playoffs. Did not expect to this year because we're at a very tough place to coach and. Um, very young team this year. Had a lot of juniors and sophomores getting significant playing time, and kids that had not started or played on varsity before represented probably close, well, a little over maybe 3/4 of the kids that we had on the field. So took our lumps early, did some good things in the second half of the season. So finished on a real positive note. And again, I'll do another video on that. Basically, the purpose of this video, twofold. One is quick update on Glory Days Boxing. Obviously, during the football season, I did not have a lot of time to spend on that. I did get most all of the fighters rated during the football season. The thing to the point where I would be able to finish that in the next well, going on a quick weekend getaway, but we'll be able to finish the fighters within a couple 2-3 days. The real issue I have with releasing though is that I haven't done as much testing as I've done on this previous sets, the heavyweights and the lightweights. And even though I think I have a rating formula that's down pretty good and gets very good results as is without a lot of tweaking after the fact, I still do not have the number of test fights with this middleweight set that I really like to confidently put a stamp on it that it's ready to release. So it will be getting released this month for sure. I just want to spend a little bit more time testing after I get the final few fighters rated. So that's where we're at with that. So look for more news coming up on Glory Days Boxing, the middleweight set, later this month by mid-month. And also by mid-month I'll have I'll put up a couple of test fights on the channel as well, so you can see how the fighters interact and see some of the fighters that are in the middleweight release. The other thing I wanted to do is I've kind of had an itch. I just finished a video earlier on my 1969 Ferguson Jenkins payoff pitch replay, but also wanted to play some dead ball. And there's not a lot of baseball games out there that have dead ball seasons available. APA does. Not really a big APA fan. Have never played, well, in fairness, I've never played the game, but it just doesn't interest me because I like a game with more pitcher-batter interactions, and also not a big charts guy. I like to get the results off the player's card as much as possible. The only chart game I had prior till today actually was History Maker Baseball. And I love History Maker just because it's such a unique formula and such a unique way to get to results based on attributes rather than numbers. And I haven't played that on the channel, but I still do play History Maker offline quite a bit actually when I have time to. So that said, the choices I had, Status Pro, which I have the 1976 season of and still very much enjoy playing that game. Going back to 1908 though, it's not in the new advanced version, which I really like. And so that kind of left me with limited choices. So what I did is finally, after watching videos, I went ahead and picked up Replay Baseball. And I know I just said I'm not really a charts guy, and Replay is a charts-driven game. But it's a little bit different. I watched it and I like the fact, and I can deal with the charts only because there's a good pitcher-batter interaction on every at-bat where pitchers' grades can affect the outcome. So I kind of, going by that and just kind of by the way the game flows by watching other people play videos, I decided I was going to give it a try. I actually played a game earlier, played the 1908 Senators against the Highlanders. And the Senators behind Walter Johnson won 7-4. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the game itself, but I guess not really an unboxing since I've already played it, but wanted just to, I guess, highlight the game and maybe get some feedback on what type of 1908 replay to do. I've thought about doing the Philadelphia A's 1908 season replay. The reason there is I just finished not too long ago reading Chief Bender's biography. A very interesting book. Kind of gave a lot of insight into how he was as a person. And I'm still in the middle of reading Connie Mack's biography, which is an extremely detailed and well-written book. So much so that it's literally, there's two different books. And I ordered the first one because my interest, again, is in baseball history, relates strongly to the dead ball era. So I ordered the first of two books. Each of them are well over 400 pages. And the first one covers Mack's time as a player in the late 1800s to taking over the Philadelphia Athletics with the American League when it started, and basically runs up through the dead ball years. So that's the book. That's the only version I've got, but again, it's still well over 400 pages, almost 500 actually, and very, very detailed. So enjoying that. So that's why I kind of was leaning toward the Philadelphia A's replay. Another option, obviously being a Yankees fan, would be the 1908 Highlanders replay. They absolutely were horrid that year. They won 51 games, lost 103. So that would be a challenge in itself. They did have some interesting players. Willie Keeler, Hall of Famer, was in the later stages of his career. Obviously Hal Chase, who I've done a video blog on earlier last year. Very interesting figure, though a dark and twisted baseball figure. Jack Chesbro, kind of in the twilight of his effectiveness at that point, but he is the modern record holder for most games won in a season. That's post 1900. He's still on the team. Another thing, I'm a big Ty Cobb fan, have read a lot of stuff about Ty Cobb. So the 1908 Tigers, who went to the World Series that year, were another possibility. And of course, in the National League, you have the Cubs and the Giants involved in one of the famous or most infamous games in baseball history, the Merkle game, which actually ended up deciding the pennant that year. And I've replayed that game with the prototype of Glory Days Baseball, but whether I do the Cubs or Giants season replay or not, I'll definitely replay that 1908 Merkle game with replay as well. So that said, let's kind of look at the game for those of you who may not be familiar with it. If you want a very good overview of playing the game, of how the game works, Dave at Baseball Demos has some videos, and they're a few months back, around spring, late spring, where he does a very detailed playthrough of the game and goes through all the components and how things interact. I would recommend watching that if you're interested in the game. I'm not going to do a real heavy, I guess, under the hood detailed playthrough. I basically, when I start the project, I'm just going to start playing. I will do a little bit, do maybe an inning here so you can see how it works. But let's take a look at the game itself and look at the parts that come with it. Okay, we are back on the Green Cathedral, aka my pool table, and just going to go through the components of the game. One thing that I really like about this game, and it kind of ties into one of the few criticisms I've heard about it, and it is a little bit pricey. The base components and the 1908 season ran a little over $80, which is a little pricier than some of or most of the baseball games out there. But again, it kind of leads to quality of components, and I'll just use as a comparison my game Glory Days Boxing. I wanted to focus there on making quality cards, a real high quality card stock, and I did skimp on the packaging. If you've ordered the game, you know it comes in a rather plain cardboard box, a little sticker on it, and the instructions are basic, not put in a nice bound booklet or anything like that, basically stapled together. And again, just because I wanted to focus on the charts and cards. And neither way is right or wrong. It's the choice, I guess, of whoever makes the game. I just wanted to kind of keep the price point low. And even though it is a little pricier, for the price point, you get a lot of great stuff and a lot of high quality stuff. So by no means a criticism for me. I am perfectly happy with my purchase based on what came in the box. So let's take a look at that. The instruction booklet, nicely spiral bound, a glossy cover, and again, very, very high quality. It contains the standard rare play chart, and you can see each page, good stock, color coded, very easy to follow. This booklet also has the instructions in it. So it starts here, goes through all the different basic play flow and makeup of the cards and attributes, traits. Also has the optional rules for endurance, ballpark effects, early hooks, stolen bases, etc. Very, very, again, nicely done, put together in a very easy to read format and super high quality. So definitely 2 thumbs up, A+ on that. And then the 1908 season, because the style of play differed, comes with its own rare play booklet that's more specific to that era. And again, not as in-depth as the other one, but adds a nice flavor to the game in terms of doing things that would come up in that time when the game was, I guess, a little less refined and a little rougher. So very, very good addition there as well. Then you have a couple of charts here that go through examples of play, and you can keep these out as a cheat sheet. Kind of goes through what each column represents. Again, does a sample playthrough. Tells you how to scout or rate or understand the batter and pitcher cards. And a quick overview of the game. And again, you could keep this as like a cheat sheet instead of the entire rule book. And then the 1908 season, basically the same thing. Came with how to scout the players in replay baseball using players from that year, Cy Young and Ty Cobb in this case. And then also some unique things to this particular season, including the ballpark effects. And there you see a nice picture of Bennett Park. And then also some differences in the ratings in this yearbook or these cards that aren't in current seasons, again, reflect how baseball was played in that time period. And this, the highlight, I think, and again, I mentioned I'm not a charts guy, but these charts are exquisite. Very nicely done, solid, a glossy, strong material. This is a trifold chart here where you get your play results based off the columns on the batter and pitcher cards. You go through each one to determine the result of the play by adding up the numbers on the 2 cards. Has the optional rules built in here. The column 4, which is fielder rules, has an optional umpire chart and pivot man chart for double plays. So you can get as in-depth or basic as you want, incorporating the different optional rules. And again, color-coded nicely, set up nicely. Once you understand the game mechanics and have played, I'll probably have to play a couple more games till I get super proficient. But once you start playing, you'll memorize a lot of the results, and it is really easy to follow. So well done on this. A really, really nice. Again, not being a chart guy, I think this is spectacular. So the other side, again, the replay playboard. It's got the hit and run chart on the other side and all the possibilities there and adjustments. And then a bunt chart for sacrifice, squeeze, and bunt for a hit, as well as an optional umpire defense chart that you can incorporate if you want to, and boxes which tell you what all the abbreviations mean. And this definitely, some games, I know, NPG3 has a plethora of charts, and sometimes it looks like it's kind of hard to keep track of those. But this is, all pretty much contained. Sometimes you'll have to flip this around if you want to bunt or do hit and run. But, again, well done and pretty easy to follow, even for somebody who prefers the cards like me. I'm definitely a fan of this chart. The action chart, this comes into play with the automated steal system, which is a very innovative and cool addition to the game. So if you don't want to mess around with calling your own steals, the game will do it for you. And the dead ball era, where stolen bases were a lot more prevalent, is reflected on the player cards, and you'll see a lot more stolen base attempts. Or if you want to call your own stolen bases, there are charts for that, which take into account runners' jump rating, pitchers' hold rating, and then go ahead and steal versus the runner's steal ability and the catcher's defense. So very, very nice addition there. And then the third base coach chart, which you would use in 3 levels, depending on how aggressive you want to be as a manager. And this would be for attempting to send a runner on an extra base when that result comes up on the charts. And that's really it. Again, it's a chart-driven game, but not heavy on charts, which I like. 3 dice come with it, red, white, and blue. And then, of course, down here at the bottom, which I have under these cards, I've read pretty much everything that's ever been written about the dead ball era, I think, especially 1908. Crazy '08, an excellent book about this season, as well as a lot of stuff through Saber. But for those that may not be familiar with it, or, I still went through and read this, those that just want to catch up, it's basically a season yearbook. So it's got the cover here, and it goes through, has the final standings, leaders, talks about the season as a whole, and then goes through and gives a recap. And the recaps are actually written by people who play the game, contributors. So each team has a recap which talks about the season, some of the players, and very, very nicely done. A lot of research and love was put into this, you can tell. Every team is represented, has the as-played schedule with the starting pitchers throughout the season, and finally breaks down hitters who played for more than one team, or pitchers who played for more than one team. So nicely done. Also has some score sheets, these tokens, which I don't use because I don't use the game board itself, but a cool little game board for keeping track of outs and base runners. And finally, the nuts and bolts of the game, the cards. And we'll just look at 1908 Chicago Cubs and New York Giants, since those were 2 of the teams I talked about possibly replaying. So the cards themselves, good solid card stock, and we'll take a look at New York. Starts off with the team record, where they finished, manager, and then what their basically a common lineup would have been for them. Ballpark card, if you're using that optional rule, even if you're not, it's a pretty cool addition. Has a picture of the ballpark, and then the columns, column 6, which you would use for power checks, column 2, which can be used for looping drives to the outfield, which result in singles dropping or spectacular catches, and then the more short fly, column 3, which can be short flyouts, pop-ups, or singles. And so those are all represented on the ballpark card. The players themselves, again, very, good quality cards. Not the quality of, say, a payoff pitch, which has, in my opinion, the best card stock in the game in terms of baseball games. But, somewhere in between Stratomatic and payoff pitch. So it's good solid quality. You can see a little bit flexible, but they're sturdy too. They're not going to wear out on you. And again, very colorful, easy to follow with the columns. The red die column on both pitcher and batter cards, and then the black, which represents the white die for rows, and blue, which represents rows for the pitchers. Also has their basic stats on there: hit and run, and bunt, defense, and speed for batters. For pitchers, defense, hold, wild pitch. Their starting rating, Two different ways to play it in terms of starting endurance. You can go by innings or by batters faced, which is the one I prefer. And then also a column down here, a hit and run column for the pitcher, and also a column to use when they are out of endurance or lose their effectiveness. So, you know, very simple, but again, it encompasses a lot of results, and very, very well done. You get a lot of players, and a lot of the pitchers, this is another thing I like, a lot of their pitchers from that era, names in red are hitters and names in blue are pitchers. A lot of the pitchers have their own hitting cards. So you can see for the Giants, most of their pitchers, Mathewson, Wiltz, he's a catcher, Joe McGinnity, there's the famous Fred Merkle, or infamous Fred Merkle. You know, so they have, a lot of the pitchers have their own hitting cards, which is nice, and then there's some generic pitchers hitting cards that come with the game if they do not, and this is just a random blank card. And then the Cubbies, of course, league, and again, okay, this is not where the Cubbies played, so I found this in a couple of the teams, the ballparks were mixed up. So this has League Park, which is where the Cleveland Naps played. So I'm venturing to guess if I open Cleveland, West Side grounds are indeed there. So there's the Cubs ballpark. So definitely understandable there, not a quibble at all. So for the Cubbies, again, West Side grounds has their ballpark ratings. And you can see, comparing to the Polo grounds, how the power ratings are different. 11s here on the extremes are going to lead to more home runs influenced by the ballpark. West Side grounds, not as much. 9 is marginal if the pitcher is bad giving up home runs, but definitely would see more home runs when the ballpark comes into play in the Polo grounds. So, and then, of course, the famous Cubs lineup, Tinker, Steinfeld, Kling, Johnny Evers, Hoffman. Really, top to bottom, day-to-day lineup, the Cubs in that era, the first 10 years of this 20th century, probably had the most solid lineup in baseball. And then pitchers, 1908, Mordecai Brown, Ed Roback, Andy Coakley, who would go on to greater success with the A's, Jack Feaster, the giant killer, Orville Overall, who was a solid pitcher, pitched a lot of games in relief, actually. So it's got a lot, pretty much every player that played, if you play all, as played lineups, which I know most replayers do, you're not going to have a lot of games where you're missing players that were in the actual lineup. So before I close the video, we'll just do a very, very quick sample of a half inning here. And these guys are not in their regular batting order. I guess I could put them in their batting order if I wanted to. So we'll do that real quick and just play through a half inning for those of you who are not familiar. And again, Dave at Baseball Demos has a very in-depth playthrough of the game. If you want to visit his channel and check that out and give him a subscription too, does an excellent job with different baseball projects there. So I'm going to whip these guys into a common batting order that they used. Kind of weird to see Johnny Evers hitting cleanup. Frank Chance. Harry Steinfeld and Tinker and Kling. All right. So we'll just go through a very quick half inning here, and we'll get none other than Christy Mathewson to oppose them for the Giants, so you can see how the game works. And I'm going to keep it kind of zoomed out because I want to bring in the trifold chart here on the side. So again, all the columns based on the results off the batter and pitcher's card are here on the trifold, and very, very, again, easy to follow. And I can't state enough, this is coming from a guy who normally doesn't like charts. So Really simple to play. You roll 3 dice, red, white, and blue. They're read in that order. And you'll start first by looking, the red indicates the column on both the pitcher and the batter's card that you're going to use. The white dice is the batter's row that you will use to get a number, and the blue die the corresponding row on the pitcher's card, and then you'll intersect, add the 2 numbers together, and then go to your play chart to get the result. So let's just play a quick half inning here so you can see how it's going to work. And again, you will be seeing this on the channel shortly. I just need to decide which replay I want to do in 1908. And again, comments there would be helpful if there's anything you want to see. Cubs or Giants, always good choices. Philadelphia A's in the American League, Detroit Tigers, Cleveland even. It was an exceptional pennant race in both leagues that year. Probably the best in the history of baseball in terms of both leagues having exciting down-to-the-wire pennant races. So we go 2-4-2. So it's going to be column 2 on both cards. 2-4 on the batter's card is a 55 with a raised 2. And I'll explain that. That usually comes into play more when the ballpark comes into play if this was to be shaded, which it's not. And then on the pitcher's card, it's going to be 2-2, which is a 1. So all you got to do is add those together, 56, and you'll go to column 2 here on the trifold. And 56 is a looping drive to the outfield. And fielder die 1 to 2 is left field, so we'll use this as a left fielder. If the fielder's defense rating is higher than the raised number beside the 55 on the batter's card, he has made a fine running catch for fly out, runners on second, third advance, 1 base of speed more than outfielder's arm. And this is one of the more complicated results too. Most of the results are not this simple. If the outfielder's defense rating is not higher than the raised number, and that's where this comes into play, the 2, the ball falls in for a single, runners advance 1 base, 2 bases if their field is greater than the outfielder's arm. So again, one of the more complicated readings you'll get. And we said left field, so the Giants in left field would have Mike Donlin. And his defensive rating, the raised number is a 2. And his defensive number here is a 3, so he's made a fine running catch and 1 out. So Schlegel is retired. And going to go on to Jimmy Sheckard. And again, 1 is the column. So 1-4-3, 1-4 is a 3 on the batter's card. 1-3 is a 1 on the pitcher's card for a total of 4. You'll go to column 1, 4, struck him out, and that at bat has ended. So Mathewson, 2 up, 2 down, and 5. So column 5 on both cards, 5-1, and this asterisk if you're playing the automatic steal rules, if he gets on base, this will come into play then. So it's going to be a 4 for Frank Schulte, and then a 5 and a 6 for Mathewson, so 2. So column 5 and 6. And 6 is going to be a base on balls with runner on first only or bases full, count as 2 balls. So bases are empty, so he's going to draw a walk. And now this comes into play. So Schulte is on first base. Now with the automatic steal system, okay, yeah, this is very simple. The asterisk means it's basically him attempting to steal and Mathewson attempting to hold him if you're using the automated steal system. So you roll a dice against the pitcher's hold rating, which is 4. And if the number is higher than the hold rating, it's a stolen base. If not, he holds. So he's going to roll it. It's a 4, not higher, so he's going to have to hold at first base. So 2 down, 1 on, and Johnny Evers will be the batter against Christy Mathewson. And 2-3-5, so 2 and a 3 is a 16, and 2 and a 5 is a 2, and I'll explain the ratings after this half inning. Total of 18 in column 2. So 18 in column 2, that is going to be a fly out to center field, and that will be the 3rd out. So just quickly, the way these ratings work, pitchers, 1 is the best they can have. You see Christy Mathewson, who was 37-11 that year with a 1.43 ERA, has a ton of 1s. Only when you get up to the higher rolls is he going to be less than stellar. And then the batters ratings, they vary based on the column. So this is the power column. Here, when you're looking at home runs are going to come on combined rolls of 12 to 16 on row 6 for the most part. So what you look for here, 16, that's always going to get bumped up and becomes a deep fly. A roll of 6 potentially could be a home run, because that would, if a pitcher was 5, that would be an 11, and there's an optional rule there. But like there shouldn't really be any numbers on Evers' card, because he didn't hit any home runs in 1908 that really put him at and give him an opportunity to hit a home run. If we look at someone like Joe Tinker had 6 circuit shots in 1908. So you see on his card a 9. That's going to result in 7 even potentially if it's a bad pitcher against home runs. So 9, if a pitcher here had a 3 in any of these columns added to 9, that would be 12. And again, 12 to 16 is going to be a home run. So he would get a home run there. So facing Mathewson, if both players roll a 6 on their row number, he's going to take Mathewson deep. Any other number for Mathewson, who is very good in not giving up home runs, would not result in a home run. So that's kind of how the ratings for the pitchers interact with the numbers on the batter cards to get you the results. And same applies for all the other columns. And the columns in general, column 1 will be where most of your strikeouts appear. There also is possibility for infield hits and clutch hits, walks, and some pop-ups on that column. Column 2, basically singles and a lot of ground balls, some flyouts, and also some strikeout opportunities there as well. Column 3, and that's going to be your extra base hits, your power hits into the gap, etc. Also rare plays. Column 4, and I'll do an example of that. That didn't come up. Column 4 is where your fielding ratings come into play. And column 5 is going to be where the majority of your walks occur. And column 6 is your power column, where most of your, well, pretty much all of your home runs will come off of that column. So just, we'll do the fielding column real quick. So say we roll a 4, and Tinker has a 2, so 4-2, and Christy Mathewson rolls a 5. So 4-2 is going to be a 6, and 4-5 is going to be shortstop. So what you do in that case is you take the batter's number 6 and add that to the shortstop's defensive rating instead of a number that you get off the pitcher's card. And that's where you'll generate range plays where they do or do not get to balls, and also errors. So we'll just take Shad Berry as the shortstop. His rating, defensive rating, is a 5. 11 is his error rating. So you'd add 5 to 6, which would be 11. And then in column 4, 11 would be grounder out at first, and runners advance 1 base, etc., etc. If it had been one number higher, so say Tinker had got an 11, that would have been a potential error. That would have been a total of 15. So 12 to 16 is a potential error. And if you have an error, you then roll 3 dice again against the fielder's error rating. Now, Shad Berry, every time, and again, this is dead ball era, so you're going to get more opportunities for errors. And when those opportunities come up, more likely to happen. So Shad Berry's an 11. So anything you roll is going to be an error because it's above that number pretty much. So Red and white, 66, definitely an error. And then the blue die, if it's 1 through 5, it's a 1 base error. And then if it comes up a 6, it would be a 2 base error. So that's how errors are determined. Again, pretty simple, 1 extra roll, but very, very intuitive and easy to figure out. So that's just a quick half-inning playthrough of the game, just to give you an idea of how it works if you have not seen it before. And again, we'll be deciding what replay we want to do on the channel, and we'll be rolling that out sometime in the near future. And so thanks for listening. And again, the update on the middleweights, finishing that up, that will be out this month. So appreciate the support for the boxing game as well. Good to have some free time to get back into this hobby as well and get some more content on the channel. So thanks for watching. And until next time, keep rolling for the fences and have a good night.